Okay, so welcome to our first lecture. I'm going to try for maybe more mini lectures, I think. Shorter lectures because in my other class, I have some longer ones and maybe they're too long. So this is going to be an attempt at keeping it fairly short while also giving you class content in other ways on career courses. To introduce this class, we're going to be looking at adolescent development. And I think the hardest thing with adolescence and with emerging adulthood is I really can't give you kind of hard and fast days or times or age domains in which adolescence happens for an individual, because many of you probably don't think of yourselves as adults right now, or if you do, why? What age would you be considered an adult 100 years ago? Probably a younger age than what we consider now. So it's changing, it's fluid, it depends on your cultural and societal contexts as well. And then in the future, do you think adolescence is going to get longer or shorter? Is COVID going to change it? Is the upheavals within our society going to change how we think about adolescence and emerging adulthood as well? So what makes you an adult? Getting married, having a job, financial independence, a brain that's fully developed, so your prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain is the last to kind of develop. It starts from the back and goes to the front. Having a brain that's developed, having a college degree, having more responsibility, having a kid. How you answer this is going to be very individual and very specific to you as well. I know that having children and having financial independence definitely seems to kind of kickstart my adulthood as well. So we have a lot of shifting perspectives. So pre the Industrial Revolution, and I love history, so I'm going to maybe go a little too long on this. I love history. So pre-Industrial Revolution, so before kind of the 1800s or 1850s, about that time where there was really no adolescent period. We had more of a rural, agricultural, farm-based society throughout the world. How many developing countries today still are. And so there was no really adolescent period or child period. There was infancy and toddlerhood, and then middle childhood and adolescence helped within the work of the farm. So you might have a child, a middle child who's 8 or 9 watching a very young child while the parents continue to work on the farm, cooking, cleaning, all of the hard tasks because everything wasn't automated as it is now. 150 years ago, so we're kind of looking at the late 1800s, early 1900s. Whenever I think about this, I think of my great-grandmother, who I named one of my daughters after, who was born in 1899. If you did have an adolescence, it was very short. It was under a year. You might graduate or you might finish with your formal schooling at 15 or 16 or even younger, and might have a year to apprentice or might have a year kind of to go into the city. But that was really, really it as far as adolescence. And some people didn't have it at all. They were more working as well. So 50 years ago, if we're looking at maybe our parents or our grandparents, you might have a 2 or 3 year period of transition from high school, which would have been compulsory at that point, all the way up. And maybe you were in college as college became more popular 50 and 60 years ago. Or you might have had a period where after school you just had jobs, but people married earlier and they had children earlier, and they had a more traditional employments earlier as well. So within our current time period, we're seeing adolescence and emerging adulthood as a 10 to 15 year period of transition. So we think of teens and tweens, and then we think of emerging adulthood. It would probably be even seen as longer as well because adolescence and puberty are starting earlier. 8, 9, and 10 years old is not out of the norm right now. And people are not really settling down, getting married, having children, stable employment until their late 20s. So we could even see that maybe in the next couple of years, it might go from a 10 to 20 year period of transition from middle childhood, from being taken care of very strongly by your parents to this gradual, very long shift in the United States towards adulthood. So we have a couple of different perspectives, and I want to just start with the biological one, which is that adolescence begins in biology and it ends in culture, and that's from a researcher named Santrock, and he is well known within adolescence development. And what he kind of means is when we consider adolescence, we're considering your start of puberty. So when you start puberty, that's what we mean biology, and that typically kicks off the teenager adolescent periods. And then it also ends in culture. So if your culture is one in which adolescence ends earlier, then you will have a little shorter period than maybe here in the United States, or even within the United States, we see different changes as well, from smaller groups and cultures throughout the United States might have different ideas about how long you're allowed to kind of have this period of adolescence and emerging adulthood. So it's going from biological adulthood, so when you go through puberty and you now can reproduce, to societal adulthood, when everybody around you considers you an adult or not. We do have three kind of periods of adolescence that theorists have kind of tried to define. So we have early adolescence, which is about 10 to 13 years old. We have middle adolescence, which is about 14 to 17 years old. And we have late adolescence or emerging adulthood, which is 8 to 21. 21 is being pushed more and more, especially depending on your socioeconomic status, your culture, and where you live within the world as well. Some of the things that we are going to look at, because there's a lot of different disciplines involved in the study of adolescence. So throughout this class, we're going to use a lot of sociological theories, and that's my background. My bachelor's was in just child development, so straight development and theory, and my master's was in childhood studies, which is the sociology of children. So how children learn and grow within different cultures as well. We're going to look at anthropology as well. We'll look at biology, which we've kind of already touched on. We'll definitely do some psychology as well, because we're pretty much psychology adjacent, looking at the whys and hows of why people do what they do, and then child development, the whys and hows of how people develop. In adolescent development, we're going to look at physical development, so both gross motor and fine motor. We're going to look at social development, so we are very social creatures, so how do we grow within our particular society, culture. We're going to look at emotional development, so our mental health as well, and we're going to look at cognitive development, which would also include language acquisition, our ability to communicate as well. So we're going to kind of look in these areas, which then have more subsets within them. These are the areas of development that we're always concerned about. You would have heard this in child development or in our 302 studies of childhood. And now we're going to continue that work with understanding more about our theorists, but really, really diving deep into what they thought about adolescence and our journey into adulthood. Oh, whoops. So sorry, I gotta go all the way. You saw my Kim Kardashian. So one of the contexts that we're gonna look about is Bronfenbrenner. And so I use Bronfenbrenner. I love Bronfenbrenner because I have my sociology background. And when I introduce it to people, I always use Kim Kardashian as an example of somebody using Bronfenbrenner as a context, because nobody in the United States has not heard of Kim Kardashian or has like one thing that they know about her or her family. And she's a very polarizing character. You usually love her or hate her. So what do we think about Kim Kardashian? She is the individual in the middle of Bronfenbrenner's idea or his context or his circles, whatever you want to call them. So around her, her microsystem would be her family. She's got a very close family. She's married to Kanye, she's got all those kids, and then she's got her sisters, which she's also very close with and has built a business with. So her business would also be part of her microsystem. We might also have her community or her neighborhood. I believe she lives in a very, very affluent part of Los Angeles, and she's built some kind of gigantic mansion with Kanye. It's very kind of spooky looking. Not a lot of decorations. I don't know why I don't have pictures up. Maybe they look at their pictures on their phone. I don't know. And then And she's got close friends as well who are equally as famous and rich as her as well. So that's her microsystem. That would be the first thing around Kim and the things that Kim comes in contact with on a daily basis. Then outside of her, we would have her exosystem. So these are the larger systems around her, which is very interesting because most of us are really linked into our community and the systems around us. We have our doctor, we have, if something happens, we call firefighters. You know, if our house is on fire, or like Northern California is on fire, always, you know, that's who we call. We pay our taxes so that we have communities that can provide services for us. Kim is really interesting in that she's kind of opted out of a lot of that. For example, she didn't attend college, but she is now becoming a lawyer because she has those kind of connections and money. So she's going to pass the bar without having gone to law school or finishing her bachelor's degree, because somebody is willing to apprentice her, which is quite unusual. That doesn't typically happen to a normal kind of non-celebrity. She also, when there was a fire, I find this fascinating. Her and Kanye actually hired private firefighters to defend their neighborhood. So she's not one who probably is linked into our systems that we typically think about when we think of our exosystem. And then finally, our macro system, which is our world, our society, our mores, our values, our beliefs. Kim fits well into this as well, because why do we know about Kim? Because she had a sex tape. What does that say about our values, attitudes, and beliefs in the United States in the 2000s, that a sex tape could propel somebody to kind of stardom? And then also, what are her beliefs? What are her attitudes and values? And how does that fit within her society of Southern California, being Armenian, kind of reconnecting with that background and that faith in the last couple of years as well. So we go from small to micro out to the macro. And this is going to kind of be a way that we're going to look at the study of adolescence as well. And that's why we're going to be using the pre-seed proceed model, because it's also a way of kind of thinking about somebody's community, about somebody's context, about how you fit into your culture, into your world, as you are starting to develop as well. So that is it for my kind of mini lecture. I'll also have some PowerPoints on Cougar courses. I'll have a reading reflection as well, so that we can kind of dive into the work of the study of adolescence. All right, thanks so much, guys.